That is the only mistake they made making this shit. Oh. Ooh. 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 Okay. That might be good. Is that good? Oh my god, it's good! It's good! Quick start me. Hell yeah, well, now we're moving. Now we're moving, bitch. Can it not turn? Oh my god, it can't turn. It'd be right there, sweet spot. Sweet spot me. Okay, today's agenda. What is today's agenda? I don't know why I have to get so close to the camera because I have a microphone now. So today's agenda, what is it? Boom, boom, boom. Wanted to do cardio this morning. Woke up a little later than I thought because I just left my alarm off. You're welcome, Dad. But we're on cardio right now, so that's a good thing. I'm currently watching, because I'm an iPad kid, I'm currently watching Rear Window, which is a Alfred Hitchcock film. I think I'm butchering his name. I know Hitchcock is his last name, but what else are we doing? Okay, talking about Phil Heath. That's why most people might have clicked on this video. Maybe, maybe not. So we'll finish up cardio, and then I'm gonna take a shower, shave, and we'll go right into how I met the infamous 7-time Mr.Olympia Phil Heath, and how we talked for 20 minutes. So I guess you could say I got my moment to rise and shine, my 15 minutes of fame. So it was pretty interesting, but I'll hop into that now. Shower, shaved, ate, finished up cardio to map everything out for this story. So it all started with a seminar in Austin, Texas, at the House of Gains gym. The people that were there were Adele Garcia, Bernadette, who was one of the judges, one of the pro judges, a couple of pros there. There was also Phil Heath being the main portion of the story. But got there around, and the event was from 10 to 2 p.m. And basically, what they were going to do is, or what they did do, is have us, run through mandatories, meet a couple of the pros, basic stuff as far as, being able to walk around, see who the venues were, or the sponsors, I guess you could say, for the event. Learn, what the mandatories are. Phil Heath came in around, I don't know, maybe 11 something. Having him talk and, the motivational factors of bodybuilding and, continuously working out in the gym, and his story also, with him talking about, only having $42 in his pocket when he did his first ever show. Talking about the rebounds and stuff like that. How obviously going on his run of, winning 7 times.
Favorite state, to be quite fair. I grew up in Seattle, Washington. A lot of you guys know. I then went to college at the University of Denver. Decided to go do some bodybuilding, and I think I did okay. But what the really cool thing was, after winning that Olympia, the first one, was feeling like entrepreneurship had to be paramount. And then also feeling like, when you say my nickname being the gift, where can I give back? And that is to be a part of the NPC, putting on events. And of course you guys have seen the Phil Heath Classic, but that is done really well, can't lie. But what's even better is that now I get to team up with Freddie and his amazing staff, and now we call it the Phil Heath Super Show. So we're so excited about it because it's on June 14th. We cannot wait to have you guys be a part of that. But most importantly, I'm just so pumped to be around you guys. Because when I travel around the world, I get to see a lot of people. I've always noticed that people in Texas, you guys do it big. And you guys do it better than everyone. And that's why we always do the best shows here in Texas. Woo! So, it's just my honor and privilege to be a part of this bodybuilding community. And, we cannot wait. My wife, she'll be coming here shortly, but we cannot wait to be, here in June to be doing our big thing. And most importantly, just giving that platform to the athletes. I know a lot of you guys are coaches as well.
So we went through that. There was a lot of sitting around, so I had jitters, I had the butterflies in the stomach, but by the time it came around to maybe 12 o'clock, I was kind of getting annoyed because we've been sitting there for so long, and I was just waiting to go into the pose downs, which is the biggest thing of the whole entire event. So running through the whole thing, we get there, sit there, run through the basic stuff, and at the end, we were going to separate, go with the pros into the groups. I chose, to stick with classic because that's what I'll be doing for my first show. So, I went with the pro. We went through routines as far as mandatories, front double bicep, back double bicep, all the, basic stuff you would do within a bodybuilding show. So, after the hours of, sitting there for, 2 or 3 hours, go off into our groups finally, and we're able to pose down. I didn't have anything critiqued except one thing, and that was my whole goal, is to not have anything critiqued because I spend so much time trying to perfect the posing. Because I always say, if it was the 1970s or 1980s and you don't have the resources to, look up the posing, I can get that, even diet too, but all the information's there, all the sources are out there online and in person. So I think you should always have the knowledge of, I should be able to learn this no matter what. And the fact that there's people who don't know how to pose, even though they can look up a video really quickly, is kind of odd to me, because it's, the information's out there. But like I said, I only got critiqued on one thing, and that was the abs and thighs pose. And the pro told me, I don't remember his name, but I'll put his Instagram up on the screen. But one thing he told me was, during the abs and thigh shot, put your hands over your head. This is kind of make that, the form right there, almost like a tabletop. And it'll actually bring up bring out the chest more. The lats, pop a little bit better. There's more strain on them, so that, obviously they stick out a little bit wider. But other than that, that was pretty much all he told me, and we posed down for maybe about an hour or so. And going through that whole entire thing, I noticed that a lot of people were getting tired, and people were sweating really easily. And throughout the the days that I've done posing sessions for an hour, by myself after the gym, it was really easy to skate through that. So that was nice, as far as my mental is concerned, to go into that and know that, wow, I guess I do have a leg up on some of these people as far as, the conditioning aspect with the posing and being able to hold it and not have any critiquement with my posing. So I know I'm doing something right. But, afterwards I talked to the pro, and he said he was really impressed, because I was 17 when, I went there, because the event was on March 15th. And I've been waiting to, quite some time to make this video, because I didn't want to miss any aspects, but also because, I have the mics now. You can finally make some good videos for you guys. But, it was back in March 15th. But, like I said, I, trained with talked with the pro afterwards, and he said he was really impressed for my age and, the posing and the consistency of the posing, and, not really having to critique anything, which I do appreciate, because it means, obviously, like I said, I'm doing something right. But afterwards, I went back onto the main gym floor, where Phil was with his, his crew and his people, and I waited for about 15 minutes to talk to Phil, and it was actually really interesting. I was able, since I was standing there for so long, I actually was handed, I don't remember his name. His name is Matt, but I don't remember the rest of his name. But he gave me his phone, and I was taking pictures next to Jim Mannion, kind of bumping elbows, taking pictures of Phil and the people that the judges, that judge the shows, and the NPC chairman that was there. So that was pretty interesting. And then finally having talking to some people, I was able to get in there and talk to Phil for about 22 minutes. And I had rehearsed this about many probably about 7-8 times, knowing what I was going to say, how I was going to say it, that sort of thing. And I started off by saying, Phil, it's very nice to meet you. Took a picture, And, first thing I said was, my name is Matthew Dillon. I'm 17 years old. My one question to you is, a lot of people say practice makes perfect, but how many times is practice perfect? We're saying that, people say practice makes perfect, but I know that you say practice makes perfect, but how many times is practice perfect? And my biggest question, the reason I asked that question was because at the time, the biggest thing in my head was, how do I go into the gym every single day, like every other day? Because there's always these moments in these episodes that I have where, maybe I'm a little more depressed, or I'm a little more upset, maybe I'm a little happier, and things are, it's like an EKG, you're trying to balance those things out and understand your emotions on the mentality side and the mental side of bodybuilding. And my biggest question and why I asked that question was because I wanted to know, how do I go into the gym with, no matter what outside things are happening within my life, how do I stay focused, and how do I, maintain that constant progression within the gym and with life in general? Because I asked him, with the passing of his father during his career, how are you able to go to the gym and to put emotions aside and still be in there and, being able to train? Because I know that, it's very tough to go through something like that. And the one thing he said to me is, do you keep your goals in track? And I said, yes, sir, all the time. And he said, as long as you have those things and you map those things out. So say you have a whiteboard and you map those things out of what you want to do and how you want to do those things. And as long as those things are being taken care of, then the outside things, is, the smaller things in life, at the end of the day, you can always put those things away, or, depending on what they are, that they don't matter at the end of the day. As long as those things are being taken care of and those goals are always going to be set and, those things come first, then, there's no chance for you to fail. As long as those goals are maintained and kept in place, then there's no reason you won't succeed in maintaining that progress, or having a even keel, mental stability when you're in the gym. And I really appreciated him saying that. And I brought up a couple other things as far as him going into broadcasting, wanting to do more, TV things. And one thing I praised him on was, what he's been able to do as far as, people say don't meet your heroes, and in this industry I would totally neglect that saying. But I told him, I remember him saying in a video, talking about the Olympia, and I'm going against guys that are 20 pounds, 30 pounds heavier than I am, and I'm gonna show them. I'm gonna show them. You know what? I'm not even gonna show them. I'm gonna show myself. And that just meant a lot to me, because a lot of the time you're trying to prove something within this sport, no matter what it is. And most of the time, and one thing I really realized over the past couple months, is it's not about the money, at least not for me. And, it's not about, the girls that come along the way, the attention of the fans, but it's what impact can I leave behind for people to remember me by. And that's what's so important to me. And like, obviously, the fans are really important, but the attention, it's not something I care about. It's, how can I give everything to the fans? How can I give everything to the people who, believe I'm their hero? It's just, when you get praised like that, and it's almost like you feel like you haven't done anything yet, that's what it means to me. And also being able to, to beat myself. Going into a competition, you always say, I gotta beat this guy, and I gotta, go after him, and I gotta beat him in this pose or whatever. It could be in powerlifting, sports, baseball, football, basketball, whatever. But as long as you beat yourself and be better than you were, at least in individual sports, I think that's the biggest thing. And I wanted to thank Phil, and that's the one thing I did, and I'm happy I did, because when you have those people that say those things, and it makes you go, wow, I never thought about it like that. And then now you have a totally different outlook on how you're supposed to, maybe, go into the future, on how you're supposed to deal with those things. So that was one thing I thanked him on. And, so just talking about future endeavors, and, talking about having the certain goals and, what you're trying to do within the future and, success wise. But other than that, there wasn't much to it. I was able to talk to him for quite some time and, was able to enjoy that space. I'm sure when I see him again in November that, I'm sure that he'll remember me, especially with the conversation we had. And there's still some details that are missing because, it was a while ago, but it was an important conversation, and I'm glad I was able to have that one-on-one with him. And, it was a great experience. And so, that's pretty much what happened, and that's pretty much the video. It's just something short, but I know it's nothing, nothing special. We'll have some stuff coming soon, but it was just something that I wanted to film, and hopefully in the future, look back on it and go, yeah, I remember that, and now when I, in the future when I'll be at seminars and talking to the fans, and I go, yeah, I remember when I was standing in line for 3 hours or 2 hours to see Phil or meet Jay. So. I will see you guys in the next video. Hope you guys enjoyed this little segment. Nothing too special. New videos coming on the way. So I will see you guys next time. Peace.